So, welcome to Outfoxed Book Review, where we deliver the finest fantasy directly to you. I'm Oliver Evanson.
I'm Bridget Evanson.
And if you can't tell, this is our first podcast together. We're excited.
Day one.
That's right, day one. And today we're going to dive into Warbreaker, which I believe is a hidden gem written by Brandon Sanderson, the current God King of fantasy. And now, if you've read the book, you probably will get that joke, but you might not get it till after you read the book. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why Warbreaker. So I can start with that. First off, actually, believe it or not, this is probably, I've thought about this a lot. I think this is my favorite Brandon Sanderson novel. And he has a lot of novels now, and I've read many of them several times through, and I just happen to like this one a lot. And I think it's kind of underrated. Maybe that's why I like it, but I think it's probably one of the best novels he's written.
Why, for me, I think this is my very first Brandon Sanderson book I ever read, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So that was my introductory book. So why not talk about my introductory book, right?
It's the one, I got you into. I'm like, you got to read this, and
it's
kind of romantic. The whole God King series, there's a whole romance start there, mystery romance thing going on. It's good.
And I like romantic books, so this whole fantasy novels was new to me till I met him, right? So
yep, and I know
see what I think about fantasy novels, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I'm not a romance person per se, but I love romance as a subplot to a fantasy novel. Like I'm a diehard. I love the lovey-dovey stuff. But I don't want to just like read romance. I like the fighting and the action, and I like all the magic and the cool things that happen. And so I'm excited to talk about one of the characters, the cool magic system that exists in this world, and also we'll try to have a spoiler-free discussion about some of our favorite moments.
I will try.
In the book. Yeah, it's been a minute since Bridget's read the book. I did listen to it, I think, last month. So, yeah. Let's dive right in here. So first off, for some of our listeners who are with us, some of you may not know who Brandon is. Most people do. Like if you're a fantasy reader, you know Brandon Sanderson. That's why I'm only going to do probably one book of his, because the majority of the listeners who hopefully will end up listening to this will know him. But I know some of them. Some of our listeners here don't. Some of the people who join my email list are unaware of who he is, so I want to talk about who he is. So Brandon Sanderson is a renowned author in the fantasy literary genre, if I could say my words right. He's celebrated for his intricate world building and compelling magic systems. And he kind of rose to prominence with his initial novel, Elantris. That was the first novel he published. He'd written like 10 books before that, unpublished. But Elantris was his first book he sold. But I think what really threw him into the stratosphere was he actually was asked to complete the Wheel of Time series. And that's a series I haven't finished reading myself. I got about 6 books in, and for me, it just kind of was a bit too much. For me, it's a very long series.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, she hasn't read it at all. It's very heavy on the world building and the descriptions. And I feel like Brandon Sanderson, he strikes a good balance of that. He doesn't overdo it. He doesn't underdo it. And he focuses a lot more on his characters and the story along with the world building. And so it's really well balanced. The Wheel of Time was a bit heavy on the world building for me. Anyway, so he's a great writer. He's written lots of series. You might have heard of like Mistborn. We have the Stormlight Archive currently ongoing, Elantris, and these are all part of what his universe called the Cosmere.
And then he wrote The Way of Kings, right?
Yeah, The Way of Kings. That's the Stormlight Archive. Yeah, The Way of Kings. That's one I still haven't gotten her to listen to yet. That's another good book. It's quite long though.
It's hard to get into that from the beginning, right? I have to get past the beginning to enjoy the actual story.
I think that was the second book by him I had read. The first book, actually, no, maybe that was the first one. I think that was the first book I read. And then the second book I read was was the Mistborn, and then I stumbled upon Warbreaker because it was free, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Wait, and then you said Elantris is his first book he wrote, right?
His debut novel was Elantris in 2005.
Well, that makes sense how that book will make him who he is, because that's an amazing story, guys. If you haven't read Elantris, get it and check it out.
Yeah, I think that's the second book you read by Brandon. Yeah, it's Elantris. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. So okay, let's move right along here. Let's jump into, now we kind of know about who Brandon is. Let's talk a little bit about this story and the characters in it. So the story kind of makes up 4 main characters, and of those 4, we spend most of our time with 3 of them. We have Ciri, who is the youngest daughter of I forget the name now. Oh, I hate that.
We will say the king of a different land.
Yeah. The kingdom. Oh, I can remember Halandrin. Halandrin is the place they hate and they don't want to go to. Idris, that's what it is. Okay, he's the king of Idris, and Ciri is his youngest daughter, and she's essentially the useless daughter. Nobody has any expectations for her. They don't really care what she's gonna do. But Vivenna, her older sister, all the burden laid on her. And then in a surprising reversal, right, the king decides to send his youngest daughter at the very beginning of the book instead of his oldest daughter. And it's, Vivenna is feeling like useless. She's like, I don't know what to do with myself. And Ciri's like, why the heck did he send me? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not trading any of this stuff. And thus starts our whole big crazy story there. Then we have 2 other very, very different characters. We have Like Song the Bold, and he is one of the returned gods in Halandrin. And so he's kind of our comedic relief. He does a lot of, he's really funny, and he doesn't really believe that he is a god for once, and that kind of endears us to him because all the other gods are like, oh yeah, I'm a god, I'm so cool, and he's like, no, this is really ridiculous. I can't believe people actually worship me. This is crazy. Why would people worship me? He's
more like a free-spirited guy.
He's a very free-spirited guy, yeah, and he just kind of does what he wants and doesn't believe in even though his priests and his friends his priests are trying to convince him that he is a god, So he's a fun character to follow. And then last but not least, we have Vasher, who is kind of this I don't know how you describe him. He's very like candid and like just to the point. He's funny without trying to be funny, mostly because of his talking sword, Nightblood, that he carries around with him. But he's a very literal, very like, I don't know, how do you describe a person who's just like...
Straight to the point.
Straight to the point. Yeah, he's straight to the point. He doesn't beat around the bush. He doesn't make friends. He's just kind of rude. He's kind of mean.
I feel like, like when you hear the name Vasher, right? The name...
Alone, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell who he is from Vasher.
Vasher. That's probably why he chose that name for himself.
I know, right? Yeah. I like that.
So, yeah, Vasher, we follow him. He's trying to figure out this kind of mystery, what's going on in the kingdom. Like, in Halandrin, it seems like someone is trying to start a war between Idris and Halandrin, and he wants to stop that war from happening. And it seems like no matter what he does, it just the war keeps moving closer and closer and closer. Despite the reason that most of the actual Halandrin people don't really want to go to war. The Idris, even though they don't like Halandrin, they don't really want to go to war, and yet some unknown element is pushing the war forward. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he's trying to figure out this whole time. So fun mystery there. And there's his whole past has a whole mystery element there too that's really pretty cool. And it'll be fun for you to read that and kind of discover what's going on there, because that's one thing about Brandon Sanderson you'll find is that there's always another mystery. I think that's what he always says. It's like there's always another mystery. There's always something hidden. Mm-hmm. There's something he's holding back, but he reveals it. That's the crazy thing. When he reveals it to you, you're like, oh man, I should have seen that coming, because you see all the clues now, which is pretty cool. But up to that point, it just doesn't click in your head until you see it all pieced together, which is pretty incredible. Okay. So, now, when I first read this book, the magic system, the first chapter, he really dives deep into the magic system with Vasher. And it can be a little like, whoa, if you haven't really read any Brandon stuff and you haven't read any like kind of unique magic systems in the fantasy realm, it's very like, we would call it a hard magic system where you can really, it has very strict rules of what can be done and what can't be done. And he describes that at length in the beginning. This, I think it's called biochromatic breath. Or the concept of awakening an object, bringing an object to life with your breath, and you have to acquire lots of breath in order to awaken certain items, And it's a really cool but very kind of jarring system. If you're unfamiliar with this kind of with Brandon's magic, it's kind of initially for me. I remember when I first read it, I'm like, this is really hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah. And it's also like how the breath cannot be taken by force. It has to be given willingly.
It has to be willingly given
you
away.
know, it's like,
And it just goes to show, and this is something, as a writer I've recognized is that it has to do with, it's not what the magic system can do that makes it really interesting. What really makes it interesting is what it can't do. Like the fact that he can't just force someone or anyone to give their breath away. The fact that they have to willingly give it away makes it a rarer commodity. Mm-hmm. It means you just can't go and just like kill a bunch of people and take their breath. You actually have to convince them to give you your breath freely, willingly. And I mean, I guess you could torture it out of them, but it's not an easy thing. It's a difficult thing to do. So gathering breath to awaken objects, there's a lot of struggle that goes into that.
And I feel like that also helps in the character development, right? Before a character can get more breath given willingly to them, they have to be well developed, like well established for people to be like, oh, I'm willing to give you your breath, Mm-hmm. So I feel like if he didn't develop his characters well, his characters, like logically thinking, right, outside the magical realm, they will lose their breath, right? They won't get as much breath as they need to, to proceed, right? And so I feel like the breath magic wouldn't be as effective, as he made it in his stories.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that having breath can do for you. Like if you have so many breath, I can't remember exactly how many, you no longer can get sick. You can like have perfect pitch. He's added a lot of little different things that the more breath you get, the more cool, like just the more like natural things you can have. You have unnaturally long life. Maybe like even for like, for the returned, as long as they get a breath every week, their breath can maintain them like forever. They're essentially immortal if they want to be. They can give their breath away and they can die, but ultimately they can live for as long as they want to, as long as they're getting a breath every week. So yeah, it's all the limitations there, all those little things, and you don't learn it all at once. It slowly is kind of built into the novels. You learn a little bit more and more and more about the magic system, what it can do, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty dang cool. Okay, well. In terms of, we could talk about maybe one or two scenes that we really liked. Maybe probably nothing towards the end of the novel, but kind of at the beginning of the novel. I don't know if you can remember anything in particular that you liked.
Something I like. I vaguely remember something about colors.
Oh yeah.
And Serene with colors. Okay, just remind me what went on with those colors, but
Halandron's is like a world of color, and Idris is the opposite. Like they're two polar opposite. Idris is like bland, no color anywhere, and to have color is there's that word, ostentatious. That's like his crutch word in this novel, by the way. You hear it all the time, but it makes sense for the type of story it is. It is, the Halandron are very ostentatious. Yeah, I love hearing that word. We used to joke about that a lot when we first started reading it. Like, you're so ostentatious. But so there's all those colors, and so when she gets to Halandron, Ciri, she's like in shock. Like she's kind of like the naughty girl who like she liked color and stuff, and so she'd go through the mountains and bring flowers. So I'm like, oh, you shouldn't bring that color here, yada yada. And now she has this opportunity, even though she kind of feels bad about it, to have color all the time. And honestly, at first she kind of resists a little bit because she doesn't feel comfortable.
She's not used to it.
And then, but eventually, she just totally gives in. Dressing all the beautiful dresses, doing her hair, changing your hair color, all that fun stuff. Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah. Oh. So Ciri in her color.
Yeah. See, I remember that part.
Yep. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good scene I like. There's so many good scenes, but I'll probably just say. I really liked Light Song the Bold. At one point, he thinks when his story is kind of stagnant, like things are kind of more happening to him than like him actually doing things. But when he starts to get in, he's what do you call it? He's very interested in his past. When you become a returned, you forget everything about that happened in your past life. and you start almost as a newborn person, except for you have all your knowledge and skills that you had in your past life. And so because they won't tell him his past, he wants to know it. And so about halfway through the novel, I'd say maybe a quarter of the way, I can't remember, he starts to try to figure out what he was, and so he's guessing. And at one point, he thinks he's a detective. And so he's going around trying to be like a detective and trying to solve mysteries and things. And it's pretty funny to watch him go through that. I like that. And I guess you'll just have to stay tuned and watch and see, is he a detective? Is he not? What does he find out about his past life? It's really quite cool what he was. So yeah. Anyway, fun. So let's see here if I'm missing anything. Okay, let's talk about another reason why I chose this book. And this is going to be kind of wrapping up, getting towards the end here. The cool thing about this book is when I first started reading it, the reason I read it is because Brandon offers it for free on his website. Anyone can go there. The entire book is there, and you can read it. Now, initially, when I first got it, he actually had it as a PDF file. And what I did is I had it on my phone. I think I had a Motorola Droid. This was before I switched to iPhone, and this was back in college, and I got it. I downloaded it on my Droid, and that's the first book I read completely digitally. The small screen, I think, really facilitated that. I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much on an iPad. Just the fact that I could pull up my phone, read for a few minutes, just swipe. And I just did that every day for like a few weeks, and within a month, I was done. That's how good it was. And let me see if I can find that. I think I have it here. Yeah, I have it right here. This is the original one. He used to offer it on his website. I don't know if he does anymore. I couldn't find it.
That's what you read?
Yeah, this is what I read. It was just a PDF file. It had the map, everything. Yeah, it was like the full book. He just had it on there for free. And he still does. It's just not as a PDF file anymore. And I would share this with you guys, but because if you look at he offers it for free, but under a certain Creative Commons license. And just to be on the safe side, I'm not able to share it with anyone if I potentially can profit off of it. And since I might profit off of subscriptions from my Substack, I decided not to post it on there. So I would recommend, if you want to read it, you can go to his website, BrandonSanderson.com, Warbreaker. You can even look it under, I think it's under online library, free fiction. Yeah, right there, free fiction, and there it is, Warbreaker, right there. The entire book is here. He gives a whole explanation on it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so if you're new to Brandon and you have no idea who he is, in my opinion, this is the best way to get started, because you can read an entire book of his completely for free. You don't have to buy anything, pay anything. Just go to his website, open it up, and start reading. And you can see you can just go from chapter to chapter. Let's see, this might be better if I maximize this here. So we can see that, yeah, right here on this right side, we have the introduction, the right explanation, acknowledgments, prologue, all the way down. You can load all chapters all the way down to the final chapter here. Oh, there's a lot of chapters. That's a lot. 58 chapters. So, yeah, it's a lot of chapters. Actually, even more than my book I'm writing. It's 48 chapters. So, yeah, it's a fairly good-sized book, but it's not huge either. So it's a great read.
It's
compared to his other novels, which are like 100 and something chapters and about 1,000 some odd pages. Yeah, this is like half that. So okay. as far as Brandon Sanderson goes, this is a short book. But yes, for some it may be quite long. Yeah, but it's a great way to start into it and get reading his stuff. Excellent. And there's one last thing. Once I read it on his website, or once I read it from the PDF that he gave out for free, one of my friends, he introduced me to a website called Graphic Audio, and I love Graphic Audio because Graphic Audio is, they say it's a movie in your mind, and it really is, where they create full cast productions of books. And Brandon has
with sound
effects and music, and it's incredible. I honestly aspire to have my books be on this website sometime in the future. So it seems like they worked out some sort of deal with Graphic Audio, or rights deal with them. You know, I don't know exactly how all that works. I'd be interested to find out. But they record his books there, and you can buy it as a series. You can buy parts 1, 2, and 3 separately. I highly recommend this. I actually recommend reading the book first, because there are some minor changes they make Nothing big, nothing major.
It's just like a sentence change.
Sentence changes here and there. I will, there was one big part in part 3 where they kind of changed like an order of some of the chapters or something, and it kind of shocked me when I listened to it versus when I read it. So I still would recommend reading it first, right? Especially you can read it for free. These ones do cost money. You'll have to buy them if you want to listen to them, but they are really good. And I'm a big fan. And I'm not affiliated with these people at all. They're not making any money off of this whatsoever. They don't even know I'm talking about it. But yeah, I would definitely check it. You can see there it is. They have their little thing, trademark thing, a movie in your mind. Excellent. Check them out. They are phenomenal. Not just Warbreaker. They have tons of other great books and stuff on there. So highly recommend them.
And I will add that if you want to introduce your kids to good books, like our kids love listening to Warbreaker from what do you call it? Graphic audio. So.
Yep. So true. So true. Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today. So thank you for joining us.
Wait, you've met Brandon Sanderson, right? How was it?
Oh, that's true. So Brandon, when we lived in Rexburg, he came, and he actually came several times, but I only got to go, I think, once, right? Mm-hmm. To the Barnes & Noble library at the Idaho Falls, Idaho. Is it the Grand Teton Mall? I think it was.
I think it is.
Yeah, the Grand Teton Mall there. And I got to meet him. The guy is incredible. It was super fun. I felt like a dork talking to him, but
he was nice.
Oh yeah, he was really nice. I told him how the first book I ever read was an advanced copy of The Way of Kings. I found it in Ghana, of all places. That's where
did?
Yeah, that's where I got it. I bought it in Ghana, so it got shipped all the way to Ghana from U.S. and I found it and bought it because I'm like, it looked really cool. And at the time, I didn't really know Brandon that well or anything about him. Ethan, actually, my brother, told me more about him when I got home. But yeah, I fell in love with that book, and then after that, it's like, yep, I want to read his stuff, and I have enjoyed it ever since. And I will say Brandon has really informed. He's the type of writing I always wanted to do. I always kind of wanted to break out of the genre conventions of like, we just write about elves and dwarves and trolls and all these kind of like Tolkien things. They're cool stuff, and kudos to people who write those things. But I always wanted my fantasy novels to be something different, my own creatures, my own creations, my own worlds. And Brandon is, I think, the first writer of like renown anyway who's really done this and done it well. And I'm sure there are other writers that have done it, but it really struck a chord with me. And I'm like, this is the kind of books I want to write. So if you like Brandon Sanderson, I'm hoping you'll also like the books I write, because it's going to be not the same, right? But like it's going to be a similar idea where we're not writing traditional fantasy in the sense of like elves and dwarves and things like that. We're going to be creating our own things, and it's going to be cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, dear. So I'll just say thank you to my amazing wife for joining me. Yeah, she's not a big fantasy reader. I'm trying to turn her into a fantasy reader a little bit at a time. So she's going to be joining us for these podcasts as much as she can. Yeah.
Well,
as much as she can.
As much as possible. If you read some of my books, then I promise to be on your podcast more often.
How about
and
you read one of mine, I'll read one of yours. How about that?
Deal. No, deal.
Deal. We can do that. And so, yeah, but we'll be reviewing. Our next book we're going to do is Five Broken Blades. And I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. I think it's May Corland or Maya Corland. I'm not sure. I've actually never heard of the book. I was just introduced to it. It's actually a brand new book that was released this year.
Wait, you're saying I have to read that book too?
Yes, you have to read that book too. Yeah, you read this book a long time ago, so it doesn't count. You're gonna read the next book, and then I'll read one of your books. Okay. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it. Okay. That's another thing I should probably preface is we are very busy people. Too busy. We got 4 kids and jobs and everything else going on. Right. We both work, and so doing this podcast is kind of a stretch. So we will be listening to these books, most likely not so much like reading them page for page, but I believe there's merit in listening. I enjoy listening, and so we'll still have lots of good stuff to share, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you guys for coming. You're all amazing. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you all next month for our next book review, Five Broken Blades. See you next time.
Broken blades.
See ya.